You have no business being in a classroom for educated people. The words detonate in room 204 like a grenade. Professor Sterling stands over the black woman in row 3, his face twisted with academic arrogance. She sits quietly in simple clothes, notebook open, absorbing his venom with unsettling calm. 24 adult learners watch in horror as their instructor destroys a fellow student's dignity. Some record on hidden phones. Others stare at their desks, remembering their own humiliations. Sterling doesn't know he's speaking to Dr. Maya Johnson, CEO of a $500 million education empire. To him, she's just another charity case polluting his pristine classroom. Perhaps you should find more appropriate programs, he sneers, dismissing her with theatrical contempt. Maya simply nods. I understand. But in 45 minutes, when her assistant walks through that door, Sterling's world will collapse. The woman he just humiliated controls the funding that keeps this place alive. What would you do if you witnessed this? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The weeks that follow unfold like a slow-motion car crash, filmed in high definition. Maya attends every class, sitting in the same third-row seat, wearing the same unremarkable clothes, carrying the same weathered notebook. She watches Sterling dissect student confidence with surgical precision, his methods refined through years of unchallenged authority. During the second week, when discussing educational equity, Sterling delivers a monologue that makes Maya's blood freeze in her veins. The achievement gap isn't about resources, he explains, pacing before the whiteboard like a prosecutor making closing arguments. It's about inherent capabilities. Some demographics simply lack the cultural capital necessary for academic success. His eyes find Maya in the third row. Wouldn't you agree, Miss J, based on your background? Maya sets down her pen with deliberate care. I think cultural capital is often a euphemism for systemic exclusion, Professor. The room goes quiet. Sterling's eyebrows rise with theatrical surprise. Interesting perspective. And what's your educational background that qualifies you to challenge established research? I'm here to learn, Maya replies evenly. Same as everyone else. Indeed. Sterling's smile sharpens. Though perhaps some of us have more learning to do than others, the microaggression hangs in the air like poison gas. Around the room, students fidget uncomfortably. Maria Rodriguez stares at her desk. James Wilson, a former auto worker seeking career change, examines his calloused hand. They've all heard variations of this theme their entire lives, that they don't belong in spaces reserved for their intellectual betters. Maya makes another note in her margins, but her handwriting is tighter now, controlled fury translated into ink strokes. She's documenting everything, building a case not for litigation but for transformation. Week 3 brings the essay assignment debacle. Maya submits her paper on barriers to educational access 5, pages of carefully researched analysis backed by statistics and policy citations, written at deliberately suppressed skill level to match her cover identity. She argues for community-based learning models and wraparound support services, ideas drawn from her foundation's most successful program. Sterling returns the papers with theatrical ceremony, calling out grades like a medieval executioner reading charges. Miss Rodriguez, C-. Mr. Wilson, D+. He pauses at Maya's paper, holding it aloft like evidence of moral failing. Miss J, I'm afraid this is unacceptable work. He approaches her desk, dropping the paper with calculated disdain. A large red F dominates the front page, surrounded by margin comments in Sterling's spidery handwriting. Overly emotional, lacks academic rigor, sources inappropriate for scholarly work. Maya scans the comments calmly. Her sources include Harvard Educational Review, Journal of Educational Policy, and peer-reviewed studies from institutions Sterling couldn't qualify to clean. His critique reveals more about his limitations than hers. I'd like to discuss this during office hours, Maya says. Office hours are for students demonstrating genuine academic potential, Sterling replies. Perhaps remedial writing courses would be more beneficial. The classroom falls silent. Even the fluorescent lights seem to dim. Maya folds the paper precisely, places it in her folder, and closes her notebook with deliberate finality. I see, she says, her voice carrying undertones Sterling lacks the sophistication to recognize. After class, as students file out with downcast eyes and wounded dignity, Maya remains seated. She's no longer just conducting research, she's become personally invested in this institutional autopsy. These people deserve better. They deserve teachers who see potential instead of deficits, who build bridges instead of walls. Her phone buzzes with a text from Sarah Martinez, her executive assistant. Board meeting moved to Thursday. Also, the Times wants an interview about the scholarship expansion. Maya types back, "Decline the interview. Some projects require invisibility." Sterling approaches her desk again, sensing vulnerability like a predator scenting blood. "Still here, Miss J. I understand failure can be difficult to process." Maya looks up, her dark eyes reflecting depths he cannot fathom. "Professor Sterling, can I ask you something?" "Certainly. In 15 years of teaching, what's your student retention rate?" The question catches him off guard. That's not really a meaningful metric for 45%, Maya continues quietly. 45% of your students complete their programs. The community college average is 78%. Sterling's face flushes pink. "How do you know that?" "Public records. Institutional research reports. Available to anyone who cares enough to look." She stands, gathering her materials with methodical precision. "You know what I find interesting, Professor? You talk about natural academic hierarchy, but your teaching methods consistently produce failure. Makes me wonder who really lacks the necessary capabilities." The words hang between them like a challenge thrown down in medieval combat. Sterling's mouth opens and closes soundlessly, his academic superiority cracking like eggshell. Maya walks toward the door, then pauses. "See you next week, Professor. I'm looking forward to your lecture on inclusive teaching strategies." She leaves him standing in his empty classroom, surrounded by the echoes of his own inadequacy and the growing suspicion that Maya J. is not what she appears to be. But he still has no idea what's coming. And pride, as Sterling is about to learn, always comes before the fall. Week 4 arrives like a storm front moving across clear skies. Maya enters the classroom to find Sterling waiting, his posture radiating barely contained hostility. The other students sense the shift. Immediate conversations die mid-sentence. Notebooks open with unusual caution. Phones disappear into pockets. "Miss J," Sterling announces before she's fully seated. "Since you seem to question established pedagogical methods, perhaps you'd like to share your extensive educational philosophy with the class." It's a trap, elegant in its simplicity. Either Maya reveals knowledge beyond her supposed background, or she stumbles through an inadequate response that confirms his prejudices. She chooses a third option. "I believe education should serve the student, not the ego of the instructor," she says calmly. The silence that follows is absolute. Sterling's face cycles through surprise, anger, and something approaching rage. "How dare you?" His voice drops to a whisper that somehow carries more menace than shouting. "How dare you come into my classroom, a classroom I've maintained with academic excellence for 15 years, and question my methods with your street wisdom and community college philosophies?" He begins pacing, his earlier theatrical composure cracking like ice under pressure. "Do you have any idea what qualifications I possess? Do you understand the rigorous training required to teach at this level?" Maya remains motionless, her expression serene. "I understand that qualifications without compassion are just credentials." "Compassion?" Sterling's laugh is harsh, brittle. "This is education, not therapy. This is about intellectual rigor, academic standards, the preservation of scholarly excellence against the endless tide of mediocrity." He whirls to face the class, his arms spreading wide like a conductor commanding chaos. This is exactly what's wrong with modern education, the assumption that everyone deserves access to advanced learning regardless of natural ability or preparation. Some people are simply not equipped for higher-order thinking. Maria Rodriguez stares at her desk, her shoulders hunched. James Wilson grips his pen like a lifeline. Around the room, dreams visibly wither under Sterling's academic scorched earth campaign. Maya stands slowly, her movement drawing every eye in the room. "Professor Sterling," she says, her voice carrying quiet authority. What exactly do you think makes someone equipped for learning? Intellectual capacity, academic preparation, cultural capital. He spits the words like ammunition, things that can't be faked or wished into existence. And you determine these qualifications how? By looking at someone? By their address? By the color of their skin? The question lands like a physical blow. Sterling's face flushes deep red, his carefully maintained academic mask slipping completely. "Don't you dare," he hisses. "Don't you dare play the race card in my classroom. This has nothing to do with—" "Then what does it have to do with?" Maya interrupts, her composure absolute. "Because I've watched you dismiss Maria's questions about learning disabilities. I've seen you ignore James's insights about workplace education. I've observed you write off student after student based on assumptions that have nothing to do with their actual capabilities." Sterling advances toward her desk, his professional veneer completely abandoned. "You want to know what this is about? This is about maintaining standards. This is about preventing the degradation of academic excellence by people who think attendance equals achievement." His voice rises to near shouting. "You walk in here with your attitude and your assumptions, thinking you can challenge 15 years of educational expertise with your feelings and your victimhood narratives. Well, let me tell you something, Miss J." He leans across her desk, his face inches from hers. "You don't belong here. None of you belong here. This is a classroom for people with actual educational backgrounds, not a social service program for adults who couldn't figure out life the first time around." The words detonate in the silence like grenades. Several students gasp audibly. James Wilson half rises from his chair before sinking back down. Maria Rodriguez's eyes fill with tears she refuses to let fall. Maya meets Sterling's gaze without blinking, her dark eyes reflecting depths of experience he cannot begin to fathom. "Are you finished, Professor?" The question is asked so quietly, with such devastating calm, that Sterling actually steps backward. "Because if you are," Maya continues, reaching for her phone, "I think it's time someone else joined our discussion." She dials a number, her movements deliberate and unhurried. Around the room, phones emerge from pockets and purses as students sense something momentous approaching. "Sarah," Maya says into her phone, her voice carrying across the deadly silent classroom, "I need you to come to Riverside Community Center immediately, room 204, and bring the foundation files on educational discrimination patterns." Sterling's eyes narrow. "Who are you calling? Your social worker? Your—" Maya holds up one finger, silencing him with a gesture that carries more authority than his entire academic career. "Sarah, also contact our legal team. We may need documentation of hostile educational environments." She pauses, listening. "Yes, I know it's unusual, but I think we're about to have a very important conversation about educational equity and professional conduct." She ends the call and looks up at Sterling, whose face has gone from red to pale gray. "She'll be here in about 45 minutes, Professor. I suggest we use that time productively." Sterling's mouth opens and closes soundlessly. Around the room, students lean forward in their chairs, phones recording, sensing that something extraordinary is about to unfold. Maya folds her hands on her desk and smiles an expression that somehow manages to be both gentle and terrifying. "Now then, shall we continue our discussion about who belongs in academic spaces?" The trap Sterling built so carefully has become his prison, and he doesn't even know it yet. The 45 minutes that follow stretch like hours under surgical lights. Sterling attempts to regain control, pacing before the whiteboard and delivering impromptu lectures on proper classroom behavior and respect for academic authority. But his words carry the hollow ring of desperation now, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. Maya sits in perfect stillness, her notebook closed, her hands folded. She doesn't take notes or ask questions. She simply exists, her presence somehow growing larger and more commanding with each passing minute. Around her, 24 adult learners sense the shift in atmospheric pressure that precedes lightning strikes. "I don't know who you think you're impressing with this little performance," Sterling says, his voice artificially loud in the fluorescent-lit space. But professional educators don't respond well to intimidation tactics. Maya checks her phone. 38 minutes. The precision of her countdown sends visible shivers through Sterling's composure. He turns to the class, seeking support from students who've spent weeks under his academic tyranny. Class, I think we can all agree that disruptive behavior has no place in serious educational settings. His eyes sweep the room desperately. Education requires discipline, respect for... The door opens. Sarah Martinez enters like a force of nature compressed into a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. She carries a leather portfolio and moves with the fluid efficiency of someone who manages million-dollar budgets and board meetings with Fortune 500 executives. Her presence immediately transforms the community center classroom into something resembling a corporate boardroom. "Dr. Johnson," she says, her voice carrying quiet authority, "I apologize for the delay." The acquisition meeting ran longer than expected. She approaches Maya's desk, her heels clicking against linoleum like a countdown timer. "I brought the Q3 reports you requested, along with the educational impact assessments from our latest school district partnerships." Sterling stands frozen at the whiteboard, his mouth slightly open, his mind struggling to process what he's hearing. Around the room, students lean forward with collective breath held. Maya accepts the portfolio with calm professionalism. "Thank you, Sarah." "How did the board respond to the community education expansion proposal?" "Unanimous approval. They've allocated an additional $50 million for adult learning programs, with particular focus on institutions that demonstrate genuine commitment to educational equity." The words fall into the classroom, silence like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through every corner of the space. Someone's phone clatters to the floor. A chair creaks under sudden weight shifts. Sterling finds his voice, though it emerges as barely more than a whisper. What? Who are you?" Maya stands, her movement fluid and commanding. The transformation is immediate, and total gone is the humble adult learner seeking basic education. In her place stands someone who radiates authority earned through years of building empires and fighting battles in corporate boardrooms worth more than Sterling's entire career. "Professor Sterling," she says, her voice carrying across the room with quiet power, "allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Dr. Maya Johnson, founder and chief executive officer of Johnson Education Foundation." She pauses, letting the words settle like dust after an explosion. "Perhaps you've heard of us? We're the organization that provides educational funding to over 300 institutions nationwide. We've distributed approximately $500 million in scholarships and program grants over the past decade." Sterling's face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror as the implications cascade through his consciousness. "I came here," Maya continues, "to conduct first-hand research on community education effectiveness, to observe teaching methodologies, student engagement patterns, and institutional commitment to educational equity." Sarah opens the portfolio, revealing official documents bearing the Johnson Foundation letterhead. Dr. Johnson holds a Ph.D. in educational psychology from Harvard, where she graduated summa cum laude. She's authored 12 peer-reviewed papers on adult learning theory and serves on the editorial boards of 3 major educational journals. The classroom erupts in whispered conversations as students process the revelation. Phones emerge everywhere, recording the moment when their humble classmate reveals herself as one of the most powerful figures in American education. Maya walks slowly toward Sterling, who seems to shrink with each step she takes. "Your essay critique was particularly interesting, Professor. You found my sources inappropriate for scholarly work. Those sources included my own published research, along with studies conducted by my foundation's research division." She retrieves her paper from her folder, holding it up like evidence in a trial. "You gave me an F for arguing that community-based learning models improve retention rates. Our foundation's data, collected from over 50,000 adult learners, proves that hypothesis with statistical significance beyond question." Sterling's face has gone gray, sweat beading on his forehead despite the room's chill. I didn't know. How could I have known?" "Known what, Professor? That you were speaking to someone with actual expertise in educational theory? Someone who spent 15 years building programs that achieve 87% completion rates compared to your 45%? Maya's voice remains calm, controlled, but her words cut with surgical precision. Or did you mean you didn't know you were humiliating someone who controls funding decisions for community education programs across 3 states? The silence that follows is absolute. Even the fluorescent lights seem to stop buzzing. Sterling stands paralyzed, his carefully constructed world of academic superiority crumbling around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. Sarah steps forward, her voice professionally neutral. Dr. Johnson, the Riverside Community Center Partnership Agreement is up for renewal next month. Should I schedule a meeting with their administration? Maya looks around the classroom, her eyes taking in each student's face, Maria Rodriguez staring in amazement, James Wilson grinning like he's witnessed divine justice, 22 other adult learners processing the magnitude of what they've just experienced. Yes, she says finally, I think we have quite a lot to discuss about educational standards and professional conduct. Sterling's academic empire has collapsed in the space of a single revelation, and he doesn't even realize the earthquake is just beginning. Maya turns from Sterling's shocked stillness to address the class directly, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms filled with Harvard MBAs and federal education officials. Before we continue, she says, I want each of you to understand something. Every question you've asked in this classroom was legitimate. Every insight you've shared came from real experience that has value. Every dream you're pursuing through education deserves respect and support. Her eyes find Maria Rodriguez. Maria, your questions about learning disabilities weren't disruptions, they were advocacy for millions of adult learners who need accommodations. That takes courage. She looks toward James Wilson. James, your perspective on workplace training isn't irrelevant, it's essential. Some of our most successful programs were designed around insights exactly like yours. Around the room, phones continue recording as students witness something unprecedented. Someone with real power validating their worth instead of diminishing it. Sterling finally finds his voice, though it emerges cracked and desperate. Dr. Johnson, there's been a misunderstanding. I had no way of knowing your background. If you had simply introduced yourself properly, would that have changed how you treated these students? Maya interrupts, her tone sharp as broken glass. Would knowing my credentials have made Maria's questions more valid? Would it have made James's experience more worthy of respect? Sterling's mouth opens and closes soundlessly. Because here's what troubles me most, Professor. Your behavior toward me was reprehensible, but it was consistent with how you've treated every student in this room who doesn't fit your narrow definition of academic acceptability. Sarah steps forward, her portfolio open to reveal detailed documentation. Dr. Johnson, our research team has compiled data on Professor Sterling's teaching methods over the past 5 years. Shall I summarize? Please. Sarah's voice carries the clinical precision of someone presenting findings to congressional committees. Retention rate, 45%, compared to institutional average of 78%. Student satisfaction scores, 2.3 out of 5, lowest in the district. Formal complaints regarding discriminatory behavior, 17 over 3 years. Each statistic lands like a physical blow. Sterling grips the edge of his desk, his knuckles white. Furthermore, Sarah continues, our preliminary assessment suggests that Professor Sterling's methods violate several federal guidelines regarding inclusive education practices in programs receiving public funding. Maya nods slowly. Sarah, please contact Director Williams at Riverside Community Center. Arrange a meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss the renewal of our partnership agreement. Partnership agreement? Sterling's voice cracks on the words. Johnson Foundation provides 40% of Riverside's operating budget through various grant programs, Maya explains with devastating calm. We take educational equity very seriously in our funding decisions. She walks to the whiteboard, picking up a marker with deliberate precision. In clear, confident strokes, she writes, effective immediately, Professor Sterling's contract will not be renewed pending investigation of discriminatory practices. The words hang on the whiteboard like a judicial sentence. Sterling stares at them, his career evaporating before his eyes. You can't do this, he whispers. You can't just. I have tenure. I have rights. You have adjunct status. Maya corrects. Renewable annually based on performance and institutional need. As for rights, they don't include the right to humiliate students or create hostile learning environments. Sarah adds quietly. Our legal team has reviewed the recordings from tonight's class. Professor Sterling's statements regarding natural academic hierarchy and demographic limitations constitute clear violations of civil rights protections in educational settings. The classroom has gone completely silent except for the soft whir of phone cameras capturing Sterling's professional destruction in real time. Maya addresses the class once more. Effective immediately, Johnson Foundation will be implementing several changes to support adult learners at Riverside Community Center. First, we're establishing a scholarship fund to cover full tuition and materials for every student currently enrolled in this program. Gasps echo around the room. Maria Rodriguez covers her mouth with both hands. Second, we're bringing in education specialists who understand that adult learners bring valuable experience to academic settings. Your voices matter. Your perspectives have worth. She turns back to Sterling, who remains frozen in shock. Professor Sterling, you're welcome to reapply for teaching positions once you've completed diversity training and demonstrated genuine commitment to inclusive education. But that won't be happening here. Sterling's mouth moves soundlessly for several seconds before words emerge. This is career assassination. You're destroying my livelihood because of a personality conflict. Maya's expression doesn't change. I'm protecting students from educational malpractice. There's a difference. Sarah closes her portfolio with finality. Security will escort Professor Sterling from the building. His personal items will be packaged and available for pickup tomorrow. As if summoned by her words, 2 security guards appear in the doorway. Sterling looks around the classroom desperately, seeking support from students who've endured weeks of his condescension. He finds only justice in their eyes. This isn't over, he says as the guards approach. I'll fight this. You'll lose, Maya says simply. Because you were wrong, Professor Sterling. Wrong about education, wrong about students, and wrong about who deserves respect in academic spaces. Sterling gathers his materials with shaking hands, his movements watched by 25 pairs of eyes that have witnessed power shift in the space of a single evening. As he reaches the door, Maya's voice follows him. Professor Sterling, the essay you failed me for? It's being published next month in the Harvard Educational Review. Perhaps you should subscribe. The door closes behind him with institutional finality, leaving Maya alone with 24 adult learners whose lives have just changed forever. In the silence that follows, James Wilson starts clapping. The sound builds as others join, until the community center classroom rings with applause for justice served and dignity restored. But Maya knows the real work is just beginning. 6 months later, Maya stands at the front of the same classroom, but everything else has changed. The fluorescent lights have been replaced with warmer LED fixtures. The institutional beige walls now display student artwork and achievement certificates. Most importantly, the 24 adult learners who witnessed Sterling's downfall have become 24 graduates preparing for college entrance exams. Dr. Maria Rodriguez says, approaching the desk where Sterling once held court, I got accepted to the nursing program at Community College of Denver. Maya smiles, remembering the timid woman who used to stare at her desk when asking questions. That's wonderful, Maria. You're going to be an excellent nurse. I never thought I was smart enough, Maria admits. Professor Sterling made me feel like I was stupid for even trying. Intelligence isn't about where you start, Maya replies. It's about how far you're willing to go. James Wilson joins them, his acceptance letter to the engineering program folded carefully in his shirt pocket. Dr. Maya, you think we could get Professor Sterling to see this? Show him he was wrong about us? Maya considers the question carefully. Sterling's career imploded spectacularly after videos of his classroom behavior went viral. The hashtag number Education Equality trended for 3 days. He lost his teaching positions at 2 other colleges and was forced to issue a public apology that fooled no one. James, she says finally, some people are so invested in being right that they can't see when they're destroying lives. Sterling's opinion never defined your potential, but he tried to make you believe it did. She walks to the window overlooking the parking lot where she once waited for buses, invisible and underestimated. Now her foundation's vehicles occupy 3 spaces, bringing in tutors, counselors, and guest speakers who treat adult learners with the respect they deserve. "Can I tell you something?" Maya says, turning back to her students. "When I was 16, I dropped out of high school. My mother was sick, we needed money, and education felt like a luxury I couldn't afford." The room goes quiet. Even after 6 months, they're still learning about the woman who saved their academic lives. "I got my GED at 22, my bachelor's degree at 28, my master's at 31, and my PhD at 35. Every step of the way, someone told me I was too old, too poor, too unprepared." She moves among the desks, touching shoulders and meeting eyes. "The difference between you and me isn't talent or intelligence. It's that I had the privilege of forgetting those voices. But you shouldn't have to develop thick skin just to pursue education. You should be welcomed, supported, and celebrated." Sarah Martinez enters the classroom, carrying the familiar leather portfolio that once revealed Maya's true identity. But now it contains graduation certificates and college acceptance letters instead of corporate reports. "Dr. Johnson," Sarah says, "the board has approved the next expansion. We're replicating the Riverside model at 15 community centers across the region." Maya nods, then addresses her students one final time. Sterling believed education was about keeping out anyone who didn't meet his arbitrary standards. But real education is about transformation. It's about taking people exactly where they are and helping them reach exactly where they want to go. She moves to the whiteboard where Sterling once wrote dismissive comments about demographic limitations. In its place, she writes a single sentence: "Everyone deserves a teacher who believes in their potential. That's what we've built here," she says. "Not just a program, but a philosophy. Not just classes, but community. Not just education, but equity." Maria raises her hand tentatively, old habits dying hard. "Dr. Maya, what happened to Professor Sterling? Do you ever wonder if he learned anything?" Maya considers the question seriously. Sterling's social media accounts remain deactivated. His academic career lies in ruins. But somewhere, in the wreckage of his professional life, there might be space for genuine reflection. "I hope he did, Maria. I hope he learned that respect isn't something students have to earn, it's something teachers have to give. I hope he learned that diversity in the classroom makes education stronger, not weaker." She gathers her materials, preparing to leave the room that witnessed both her humiliation and her triumph. But whether Sterling learned anything isn't our responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure no other student has to endure what you endured. Our responsibility is to build educational spaces where everyone belongs. As the students file out, chattering excitedly about college applications and career plans, Maya remains behind for a moment. She runs her fingers along the desk where Sterling once graded her essay with such contempt, where he dismissed her insights as inadequate. Her phone buzzes with a text from the Harvard Educational Review. "Dr. Johnson, your latest paper on inclusive adult education has been selected for our special issue on transformative pedagogy. Congratulations." She smiles, remembering Sterling's final cruel words about her inappropriate sources. The paper he failed has become required reading in graduate education programs across the country. Maya turns off the lights and locks the classroom door, leaving behind the space where she learned that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger, it's transformation. In the parking lot, she passes the bus stop where she once waited in anonymity. Now she drives a foundation vehicle filled with resources for the next community center, the next group of adult learners, the next Sterling who needs to learn that education belongs to everyone. Because the most profound lesson Maya learned in room 204 wasn't about teaching methods or funding strategies. It was about the responsibility that comes with power, the obligation to use privilege not for personal vindication, but for systemic change. Sterling tried to build walls. Maya chose to build bridges. And in the end, bridges always outlast walls. The woman once dismissed as lacking cultural capital now controls the funding that shapes educational policy across 3 states. The student who didn't belong in Sterling's classroom has become the architect of programs that welcome everyone. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. Sometimes it's about making sure no one else has to fight the same battles alone. Maya drives into the night, carrying the weight of transformation and the promise of tomorrow's possibilities.